I was a young college student, just 21 years old, in my first semester when all this happened. I went to a big school in a major city, which was quite expensive. Tuition alone cost around $7,000, not counting books and other things. To pay for school, I worked part-time as a security guard at the local mall. It was a huge mall, and I often had to work extra hours and even night shifts to make ends meet. A while back, around 4 months ago, something strange happened during one of my night shifts. Normally, there were 2 security guards patrolling the mall, but the other guard had left without giving any notice. I had to cover for him, even though it meant I had to work an 8-hour shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Since I didn't have school the next day, I thought I'd have enough time to sleep and rest. It was around 2 a.m., and I was sitting in my chair, listening to music on my iPod. Suddenly, my iPod died, which left me feeling frustrated. I pulled out my phone and started playing some games to pass the time. As I was playing, I heard a faint sound, like someone humming coming from down the hall. Startled, I stopped what I was doing and grabbed my flashlight. I was in front of a store in the mall, and I shined the light towards the direction of the sound. "Excuse me," I called out. "The mall is closed. You're not supposed to be here." However, as soon as I spoke, the humming stopped, as if someone had switched it off. Feeling a mixture of curiosity and concern for my safety, I got up and started walking towards the source of the humming. I followed the sound, but no matter how far I went, it didn't seem to get louder or softer. I walked and walked, trying to find the person responsible for the humming, but eventually I gave up, unable to locate anyone. The rest of my shift went on without any further incidents, and the humming didn't return. The following week, I decided to tell my boss about the strange humming I had heard during my shift. His face turned pale, and his eyes widened as I spoke. He then shared a chilling piece of information that suddenly made everything make sense. Years ago, a woman had passed away in one of the bathrooms near the area I had been patrolling. Since then, there had been several reports of people hearing faint humming noises around the mall. The story of the woman's death and the mysterious humming had become part of the mall's history, a haunting reminder of something inexplicable. A long while back, I had my second job ever. My job was to take delicious Chinese food to people's houses. It was a cool place where they made Chinese food, and I got lots of tips for taking the food quickly. This one evening, right before the place closed, there were 3 delivery guys, including me. My boss was always strict. He told me to take the food and come back fast. The address I had to go to was in a town about 5 miles away. It meant a longer drive, but the longer trips usually meant better tips. I still remember the order. It was just some wonton soup and rice. The drive was around 15 minutes. When I got to the house, I saw it wasn't in a very nice part of town. I had a small bag of food, and before I could even step onto the curb, I looked up at the upstairs window of the house. It was strange because there was only half of a person's face peeking out. I could only see the eyes and the top of their nose. It was like they were hiding. It wasn't a kid, it looked like a grown-up, which made me feel odd. But I went to the door anyway. There was a note on the door saying that the doorbell was broken, so the door was unlocked, and I should come inside and leave the food on the table. The note was really weird, and it gave me a strange feeling. I took a picture of it. It was like a warning in my head. I looked at the window again, but the person wasn't there anymore. I thought they were sleeping, so I went in. Inside, it was super dark. I couldn't see anything, and I didn't know where the table was supposed to be. I decided to use my phone as a light, and when I turned it on, I saw the shadow of someone in the kitchen. I couldn't see their face or anything, just the outline of a person. I got really scared and dropped the food, then ran out of the house and back to my car. I never looked back at that spooky house, and I never went to that part of town again. My boss was angry even after I explained, but that's just how he was. I did another delivery that night and went home, but I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about what might have happened if I had gone to that table. Now let me tell you about another night. This was 2 years ago, and I had a night shift at a 7-Eleven. Somebody couldn't come to work, so I had to fill in from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. The 7-Eleven was on a busy road, but it was quiet at night. Usually, 10 to 20 people would come in during the night to buy stuff like beer. On this night, a strange guy came in. He was in his mid-20s, and he started making loud and weird noises. It was like he had a problem with his mind. I felt bad for him because my brother also had a mental problem, so I understood. The guy came up to the counter without buying anything. He faced me, but his eyes were looking up at the ceiling. It made me uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to do. I tried talking to him, but he just made loud noises. I looked outside to see if he was with someone, but he was alone. There were no cars in the parking lot, so I thought he must have walked. He stood there for a long time, looking at the ceiling and making noises. I felt weird, so I gave him a bag of chips and told him he could go. I tried finding a number to call for help, but I couldn't find one. Suddenly, he turned around and left the store. I felt bad for him, but I was also creeped out. About an hour later, the phone on the counter rang. When I answered, it was the same guy making those loud noises again. I got scared and hung up the phone. I started feeling like someone was watching me all night. I kept looking outside through the windows, but there was nothing there. I also heard strange noises in my house. I stayed awake all night until the sun came up. Once upon a time, I used to work at a small gas station. My shifts were mostly at night, usually on Fridays and Saturdays. Most of the time, the nights were calm and quiet. But there was one night that I'll always remember because of the strange events that took place. It was around 2 a.m., and I hadn't had any customers for a while. I was starting to feel a bit sleepy, as my job mostly involved stocking shelves and helping the occasional customer. The entrance had a bell that rang whenever someone walked in, so I figured I could catch a quick nap without any problems. Suddenly, I woke up to the sound of the bell ringing. I saw a man entering the store. He looked like a regular guy in his 30s, the kind who would come in for a late-night snack or a drink. He walked around the store, going down each aisle as if he was looking for something specific. However, it seemed strange to me because it was 2 a.m., and people don't usually come in just to browse at that time. I glanced out the window to see if he had parked his car outside, but there were no cars in sight. After a few minutes of wandering around, the man looked at me and mumbled a quick, "Thanks," before leaving. I thought he might have stolen something small and was acting strangely about it. The odd encounter left my mind after a while, and I started to feel tired again. To keep myself awake, I decided to start restocking the shelves. I was engrossed in my task when I noticed a man at the end of the aisle. He appeared out of nowhere, and I didn't even hear the bell ring. He was wearing a big hoodie and dark clothes, and I immediately got a sense that something was off about him. I quickly went back behind the counter, trying not to draw too much attention. The man was walking down the aisles, not really looking for anything, just wandering around. I suddenly realized that he was the same person from earlier, although he had changed his clothes. It struck me that he might have been scoping out the store before coming back for something else. My heart started racing as I realized that this situation was getting dangerous. The man began moving towards the aisle closest to the counter, and I felt a surge of panic. I decided to take action and greeted him with a forced smile, saying, "Welcome back, sir. Need help finding anything?" I made eye contact with him, hoping he would understand that I was trying to prevent any trouble. He came up to the counter, not saying a word, and took out something heavy from his hoodie pocket. I could see a small handgun. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest, but I kept my composure. He placed a pack of gum on the counter and said, "Just this." I was shaken and couldn't react immediately, but I eventually scanned the gum, trying to hide my nervousness. Still holding the gun, he took $1 from his jeans pocket and dropped it on the counter. He muttered a quick thanks and walked out of the store. I was in shock, not able to comprehend what had just happened. I called the police and informed my manager, who didn't answer the phone. Nothing much came out of the situation, and I was left on edge for the remaining months I worked there. I never really knew the man's intentions, and I'm actually glad I never found out. From that day on, I always stayed cautious and alert during my night shifts, never knowing what might happen next. And so, my days at the gas station continued, but that one eerie night stayed with me forever, a reminder that sometimes the night can bring unexpected and chilling encounters.